There is an esoteric saying which is, as above, so below. We're going to speculate about what is above, which of course is the sky, and below, which is our Earth. As we have entered a new age in the 21st century, it's interesting to observe with all the new amazing discoveries throughout the universe, and as we're paying more attention to Earth, it's interesting connection. I'm Agneta Borstein, I'm an astrologer, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this program, From the Sky to Earth. Today we're going to talk about the planets Saturn and Neptune. They are very different, so the topic of this program tonight is Saturn and Neptune, reality versus illusion. Now Saturn, when we talk astrology, of course, has a connotation of, as we know, the circle around, the rings around Saturn, has a certain intriguing part. We have always known about astrology because as it is, in 1781 we discovered more planets, but at this point Saturn was always used in all astrological interpretation from even Babylonian time. So we are still looking at Saturn as the main entity of coming to a force of authority. He comes in as being a quite strong god, if you will. And you know, from all the times that we do study astrology, we do use the mythological aspects of the gods and the goddesses, of course. And we also use the cycles. So we bring that from the earth to the sky and we try to see the movement, and cycles are just really helpful and practical at times. So we have Saturn, we have the symbol as grounding to earth, and he is a very ambitious planet, or the symbolic part of Saturn actually from the beginning is the father. Gotta have the father, and sometimes father leaves, so you have this the structure of coming to Earth with responsibility. There is ambition in Saturn. There is the career opportunity to belong somewhere, to really get the work done. It is the authoritative position about that which we come through in life. Getting up on clock is timing. Saturn rules timing. We got to be on time, says the boss. Or if we're independent, we still have to be on time. So it is a lot about responsibility, and also sometimes students might ask, well, what is good about Saturn? Well, it's about the wisdom and being on time where we need to be. And it also, the wise mind speaks with authority, and it's the sharing. But overall, the Saturn actually gives us that kind of feeling of, I am, and I have to come over something. I have to stand up for my rights. So at the moment, what I want to talk today about is that Saturn has recently moved into the sign of Sagittarius. It did that in September 17, 2015, and will stay there throughout December 21st, 2017. That cycles around the ecliptic. The planets are traveling stars, and they remind us about Saturn's involvement in our lives, about responsibility the next 2 years. Year and a half, or 2.5 years rather. Now he will meet Neptune, and Neptune we will find out soon. Stay with me and you will find out about Neptune, but they are very different in personalities. So Neptune will also come together, and they meet together in a challenging position, as we call a square, we can call it challenge, in November 2015, and it also goes through June, July 2016, and will last to the fall of 2016. Now, in other episodes of my show, From the Sky to Earth, we have talked about the two very strong planets, Uranus and Pluto, meeting together. So if you want to follow up that, because they are really not out of the woods yet, they will affect the world at large until springtime of 2016. So when we then start to see these two planets coming together, we learn about Neptune as being very different from the structural bones structure. Actually, Saturn even rules our teeth, down to that bones and foundation. So Neptune is more kind of as an astronomical thing. There is that, like the blue light, or the blue planet, if you will. And here we see the small Earth being very influenced by the planet Neptune, which was, of course, discovered 1846. So it's a new planet as an energy to come forth at this time of our ways of looking at. If you looked at other planets, we have one show about just Neptune that you can look at the archive under nutmeg.org. So we also take Neptune as the force since 2012 to come in and show us that water levels concerned, but also about spirituality. Those are the ecological part, but we also have spiritual part of Neptune. He does not only rule the water, he is the ocean. That's what he represents, and he always comes with his trident in his hand. But throughout looking at other cycles, Neptune also always shows us that kind of different belief system that we all seek for. It is, first of all, the spirituality, the way of mysticism, the way that sometimes we don't understand, because Neptune kind of eventually dissolved into nothing as the ocean does. There is that kind of wave that comes and shows the calmness, the beauty of the ocean, and then it's just gone. But we also know water on the earth itself is very important, as we have noticed lately, the awareness of that and what side are we on. But we can just enjoy this segment of looking at when Saturn and Neptune come together, we have choices to make. So Neptune is the deception. He kind of wants to escape from reality. And unfortunately, it rules the drugs and alcohol for those people who are not taking Saturn seriously and taking responsibility for perhaps use it more as a limitation for what we don't need to escape from a beautiful world that we still can see on our backyard. And so it's the dissolving, Neptune dissolve into nothingness, but that's also spiritual beliefs that we have visions that are very real at times. And so we also have Neptune ruling oil, and as we know at this point when I speak, the gasoline oil is very good prices, but we don't know what's behind all that war on the oil and heating oil and all that different political aspect, which this is not a political program. This is a program about astrology. So it rules dreams, and dreams in reality becomes very real once we start to observe them, maybe not necessarily analyze them, but allow the dream state to be Neptunian, to say, oh, all right, I think I understand that on some level. Maybe I don't have to analyze it, unless Saturn comes in and say, you have to. Then we will come into more of the, if you will, there's a lot of new science, that's more Uranus that we have talked about in another episode, but it's also interesting to observe Neptune in this day and age about the film and the music, but also photography. Last time Neptune was in Pisces, there was a new discovery. We started to take pictures. 100 years ago, we couldn't take pictures. Now everybody's a photographer, and we all, you know, myself including, a lot of the pictures that I use in my program, From the Sky to Earth, are my own pictures. So it is a part of, like, we need to escape. Now we escape into our own living rooms, and we have a more Neptunian part of being accepted. Neptune would be meditation and the yoga that is so beneficial for the world at large at this time, that we can take the two together. They can fight against each other, but they can also work very well together. This is a little statue, you know, well, little. It's about not a feet long, that I picked up in one of my travel to Mexico recently, where the little boy on the side had carved it, and in Spanish I asked him, did you make this? So we have a snake and the leopard coming together, and who is the strongest one? We don't know if Saturn will win, or if Neptune, with his desire to really make us see clearer for issues that are not forced upon us. We have to have faith, which is Neptune is a typical symbol or planets for, to have faith, religion. There is the faith of finding that belief system that I think is in everybody. So it's not about that they are like fighting in uncomfortable situations. But when Saturn takes a role of too much control, Neptune gets confused and he just want to shut down and not do anything. So we might escape too much onto the couch with the potato chips. We might want to say that we need to have our vision and faith, because at the moment when we move into the spring of 2016, we might see more of this dissolution and confrontations about what is right or wrong. And maybe it is for us to always have that beliefs that when we take action and do it in the right way, perhaps those are the answers, for that we can find ways using astrology for cycles. And I'm here to promote perhaps that by using cycles, we also tend to take care of ourselves more and we understand more. We might trust that we go into dream time and trust our own individual visions, and we might have more faith that whether that is in church, synagogue, or the mosque, it's still that meditation, which is a sign for Neptune, has also very respectfully become more popular, if you will. It's more accepted. In my own personal career as a professional astrologer for 30 years, there has also been that at one point in 1985 through 1990s, I actually operated an alternative metaphysical bookstore in the Hartford area. Some of you might have frequented me. And at that point, it was very unusual to be exposed to something that was alternative. People would flock to my store, and it was quite a success, actually. The 12 years that I ran it, I was able to sell it, and the people who then took it over, it ran for 21 years. So now we have this new way of looking at a new reality by being positive in our own individual belief system. I don't know for sure the answer, but some churches are disappearing, but we're also using them for meetings. There are alternative ways of living in healthy ways in life. And so when we look at this little graph, that when we as astrologer noticed in 2012 that the two planets, Uranus and Pluto, would meet together, we were quite concerned, because that went back to the 30s. Never mind us, Great Depression and following in the World War II, and then we had the 60s, for you who remember that. I was part of that in Sweden. And so the cycle that started in 2012 pretty much were, or should be over in pretty much summer of 2015, but there's an overlay because they're so powerful and so strong. So when we as astrologers noticed that Saturn and Neptune will come together, that would be like, now what? Will there be a break in the daily news? Will the news about gun laws increase? That would be Saturn. We will absolutely see, not just in gun laws, because that will upset some people, but what I'm advocating about astrology is that we will see new implementation of new laws just by Saturn going into Sagittarius, because Sagittarius in itself rules the law. It rules how we travel, how borders are being put up in Europe, as maybe in America too. But the way of looking at international relationships with Saturn in Sagittarius is quite interesting for us, or for me, try to deliver that Neptune has these positive visions about following through. For example, as this segment of the two planets coming together, Saturn and Neptune, reality versus illusion. It's not an illusionary state. It's just the reality that we have to find our own faith, our own sense of meditation in our daily lives. because Saturn is stronger. We know that. We know that by his presence of being the father, the boss, the government, authority. But he's also very realistic and make us survive. We have to stand up for our rights. So in the vision that Neptune gives us when Uranus and Pluto are still kind of overlaying in what we consider a fairly strong aspect that had 7 meetings, that again you can visit nutmeg.org and see a different segment on the webpage. So the Neptune and Saturn right now kind of throws us out as astrology, because Saturn stays in one sign for 2.5 years. The other ones are like 30-year cycles. So for this Saturn to come into Sagittarius gives these like the way of traveling and communication and breakthroughs of laws that might not have been able to change. There is that breakthrough in system of Neptune just being in Pisces since 2012. And so we have seen a lot of dissolving of even nations and people. That was it through the drought that serious, people have to leave by the millions, and breaking borders, people put up their borders, says Saturn. But Neptune is still the compassionate planet that are really trying to dissolve issues and solve them as in the spirit of all humanity. Because Neptune is that planet that once we see the reality, then is also the purification. Before my book here, The Moon's Note, my other title of another book that was previous to this is the churning process. There is absolutely something churning when Neptune comes into Pisces, and it will stay there until 2024. But going back to this segment about Saturn and Neptune coming together in this time frame up to the 2017 in the fall, or later, December of 2017, makes us also allow to see that Jupiter, the big planet, the big guy, comes into play with Neptune too. So we should, just for a year, as this program is filmed at the end of 2015, for us to have faith up to springtime of 2016 and kind of go back to those little mantras, the prayers, take care of our families, and of course help those in need. That's also a Neptunian mission and vision, to participate in life and be part of not using astrology as a stop, but to break through in the barriers of allowing Saturn to be a voice of righteousness, and Neptune to be that illusionary that is very real. Once we wake up for our dreams, we say like, what was that? So there could be population that are still in the illusionary state and not be able to carry that vision and responsibility that sometimes when we study astrology in the cycle, we do have to pay attention to that. So then when we have this planetary picture of what we had talked about, Uranus and Pluto, which you could look at the other segment. And now as we're dealing with Neptune and Saturn, Neptune tends to kind of like lose track of time sometimes. Saturn rules timing. So we want to make sure that whatever our path is in about the end of 2015 and going on to 2016, that we have our clear vision, that we know what we want to do. For example, the ones that are Sagittarius will be, of course, affected the most, and by degree, most Sagittarius born November 22nd through December 2nd has already been affected by this Saturn-Neptune involvement, and especially Saturn. There could have been changing in work situation, movements. You could have got promoted and more responsibility, maybe not much more pay, but more responsibility. The ones that will come up now and are the most affected by this by Saturn and Neptune is the ones that are born, the Sagittarius that are born December 3rd through December 12th. That would be where you will notice all the way from now and up to springtime, there might be some challenging, but also absolutely the opportunity of growth. Now the Sagittarius that are born December 13th through December 20th will have more fall late 2016 and absolutely 2017 to continue having visions and the faith of timing. As I said earlier, Saturn rules Father Time. It's a clock. So Saturn, when we deal with Saturn in astrology, we always trust the timing. Now the other sign that might be affected also in the Neptunian way is those born in Pisces, especially those born February 19th through February 22nd. That is still affected, especially February 25th, 27th, 29th. You're going to feel it at the moment and into the first months of 2016. And definitely those born March 1st through March 10th, that would be the grade of saying what is going on. Right? You might not even want to read the paper, just watch that movies and enjoy the popcorn. The Pisces that are born March 11th through March 19 will also have to wait to late 2016 and into 2017 to understand what the effect of this quite strong Saturn-Neptune involvement is, as we looked earlier on this picture that I had taken from the little statue from Mexico that I still admire, because we have this kind of sometimes war inside of ourselves, that we take the opportunity to follow the disciplinarian in us, but also take the time out and allow ourselves to kind of take that walk, go to the yoga class, find a way to maybe volunteer. Will make your spirit, which is part of Pisces, the spiritual aspect, to volunteer for something that like an hour of Saturn discipline will be better than not. And so some other signs that will be typically affected too by this Saturn and Neptune coming together is Gemini, as well as the that will be Virgo. Sorry, it takes a while. There is those 12 zodiac signs. But that's also the same way. Those are born in the early, and when we do divide the signs between the 30 degrees into 10 degrees of 3 segments, then there is that, like you might read in the paper and say, well, I don't know for sure what this is about, but you might also understand by just looking at, you can have your chart done under alab.com if you want to take a look at your own chart to see what is Saturn, Neptune is hitting your chart. So with that, when we take the emotions and the responsibility to be responsible for what we have committed ourselves in our lives, then it's also astrology great opportunity to be aware of your chart, be aware of those changes in the world. So I do thank you for staying with me from that program, From the Sky to Earth. We divide ourselves in different sectors, but we also go through the wholeness and study the cycles. So I do want to I want to thank Nutmeg Television for allowing us to come to this program and share with us our knowledge of the astrology and alternative living. So be well and enjoy that Saturn Neptune without fighting, but surrendering to the joy. Thank you.